All right. All right. So hello again, everybody, and welcome back to TMR's Master Advisor series. Today is June 2nd, 2022. This is episode number 52. We have a great travel advisor with us today to talk about finding luxury clients, but I have a few announcements to make first, and I want to introduce our sponsor for today's session. The first is that switching into speaker view is going to be the best way to watch today's episode. I had some comments last week about cameras being distracting, and my advice would be just to avoid that by switching into speaker view. That'll give you the best viewing experience, and you'll be sort of pointed to whoever's speaking at that moment. I also want to again announce that the chat on the bottom right is open, and we're going to do our best to grab questions from there as we go along today. So anything relevant, any questions or comments, I'll try to involve in today's discussion. Please don't be shy in there. The chat really has added to a lot of our best episodes along the way here. So drop anything you think is relevant in there, and hopefully we'll be able to address it as we go along today. I also want to thank everyone who joined us 2 weeks ago for our last episode on the cruise industry with Ted Blank. I know it was a holiday week for some, but I wanted to just mention again because Ted gave us a lot of really great insight into consumer cruise trends, particularly for his clients in the upper Midwest, which I know is a market we don't address specifically a lot in this series. So if you want to watch that episode, you can always find it on our YouTube page. All of our audio and video content is hosted there. And for any of you who haven't been on that page, we're going to drop the link in the chat if you want to check it out when you have the time. And then I also want to announce that we're going to be back here in a couple of weeks to talk about booking bachelor and bachelorette groups, which is a topic we haven't even mentioned on this series so far. We are really, really excited about that. And again, we hope you'll join us back here in 2 weeks, the same time. And we'll have a link to register for that pretty soon. Okay. So today, before I introduce our guest, I am very excited and happy to welcome Amy Price, the head of Sales USA West and Canada for Explorer Journeys. She's here to give us sort of a rundown on her cruise line and then what's going on in her space. I know a lot of people are aware of Explorer so far, but I know there's big plans for the next few years, and I'll let Amy take it over right now.
Thanks so much, Daniel. And at Explorer Journeys, we are super excited to be a sponsor of the Master Advisor series. And travel advisors have always been very centric to what we're doing as we're building this brand new European luxury lifestyle brand. And with that, we've had some really exciting developments as of lately. One being to support you, we've expanded our sales team and we have a greater in-market presence at the moment with sales managers in the Northeast with Christopher Chistari. We have Kathy Liu in the Southeast. In the Midwest and Central region, we have Mary Gallo, who recently joined us. And in the West region, Jonathan Hamill has joined us. And we are going to continue to expand to be able to support you on a one-on-one basis. So stay tuned with us. Connect with us on our travel advisor site, www.explorerjourneys.com/travel advisors, where you can enter our center and be able to stay connected on everything that's happening with us. We also introduced an industry first By Appointment Plus service where we virtually reduced and eliminated on-hold times, allowing you to create an appointment with us at a day and time that's convenient for you, but you can also now bring your client with you, where our journey ambassadors will help you strategize to close that sailing and sail with Explorer Journeys. Couple that with all of our compelling commercial terms, our 18% commission with our preferred partners, our no NCFs, and our 10% commission on all add-ons. We continue to remain extremely supportive of the travel advisor space and trade industry. But most exciting to us as a brand is the progress that's being made with our ship. Just this week, we had the float out of Explorer One, and we are now 349 days from delivery of Explorer One, which is our first ship of 4 that we are building, and 363 days from when we will welcome on board our very first guest to our maiden journey. So with that, Daniel, I'd love for you to roll the most recent video of the progress that we've been making at Explorer Journeys. So everyone, I would encourage you to go to our YouTube channel. You can grab that video, share it with your clients, and continue to stay connected with us because there's a lot more of our story to tell as we continue to build this brand. So I'll turn it back over to you, Dan.
Thanks, Amy. And I know we'll see if a TMR team member can grab the link to that video for advisors who want to have it as we move along today. And then I know Amy mentioned the expanding team at Explorer, and I know there's so many familiar faces from the other the other ends of the cruise industry on that team. So I'm sure a lot of advisors are very, very excited, as are we. So I do want to get to the topic of the day and introduce our guests, who we're very happy to have. So I am very excited to introduce Leah Bergner, a travel advisor at Coastline Travel Advisors, who specializes in luxury travel. She's here today to talk about finding clients that fit these luxury trips. I'm very happy to welcome Leah to the program, and I want to just say before we start, thank you so much for lending us your time this week.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Very exciting to be here.
So I know the topic of the day is finding luxury clients, but I want to sort of set the stage for us going into the discussion. I know you have an interesting story about how you got into the business, and I was hoping you could share it with everyone on the call.
Sure. I'm actually really curious myself as to know the percentage of those in the industry who've come from other careers and made an industry or a career move later in life. I did not go to school for this. I was actually a school teacher prior to entering the industry. So I did my undergraduate at UC Santa Barbara, went on to grad school at Long Beach State, Southern California. I was working 2 jobs while teaching. I was actually waiting tables, and I was a coffee house barista at a local place in town. And that is where I met the owner of Coastline Travel, he and his family, on a weekend basis kind of type thing. They would come in all the time and sit in my section, and I just wasn't really happy in the teaching industry for a lot of various reasons. And he was sharing with me his about his company and what his life is like on a daily basis, and I was completely intrigued. I think probably because of the educational aspect of it, the fact that my parents always told me I was going to be their perpetual student, and actually I think I really am. And he had a job opening for me, and I slept on it for 24 hours. Ran it past my parents, who were very, like, are you sure? Do you really want to be the travel agent? And I had to teach them it's much more than being a travel agent. I'm a travel advisor and so forth. And then I learned the trade from Jay Johnson and sat in his office every Saturday for 6 months until I finished my second grade year, my teaching for my second graders. And I never looked back, and it's been 14, 15 years later.
Yeah, well, that is a great story. And I know you were wondering how many people sort of shared similar stories. And we have someone in the chat who was a former educator. We have someone Linda said she's a former marketing director. It's going really quickly now. Someone still works as a nurse, another former teacher. And I know we've had former teachers as our guests on this series before too. So it's great to hear that. It is a sort of unique path that seems to be taken by a lot of the same people to land here as a second career, but it does make for a unique industry. So I wanted to ask you, what was the education like when you were first getting to know the industry? Was there anything that was extremely difficult or surprising when you sort of were educating yourself on the profession?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, surprisingly, and for those who have heard my story before, apologies for repeating it, but when I was hired, I had never been out of the country. I didn't even own a passport, believe it or not. So, I mean, my family vacations were camping in our backyard or family reunion type gatherings. I don't even know if I'd stepped foot into a Four Seasons at the time.
Okay.
I came from really humble, a humble upbringing, and 3 younger brothers, myself, two parents, one working parent, 1 stay-at-home mom. And I don't think I knew exactly what I was getting into, but in terms of the education behind it, as I previously mentioned, I really initially just sat in an office listening to our owner, in particular, Jay Johnson, and fellow advisors, just to kind of pick up anything that I might hear on their phone conversations with clients, or any type of trainings they might be doing, or visitors like in person or in office trainings that might have occurred and so forth from suppliers and vendors. And I just tried to soak it all in initially. We did. And then I kind of regurgitated some of the information that, to kind of, you kind of fake it till you make it a little bit, and just kind of repeat what I had heard and I trusted within our owner of our company and so forth, and started that way. I think I got kind of given a few little tasks here and there to get me started on, it wasn't, you kind of have to, you sink or swim, I got handed a couple projects to kind of do the research behind and to kind of get the proposal set up and together before I would actually talk to the clients themselves. And I figured it out. I think one really important part of this, though, was that we had a network behind us. Our agency is part of a consortium. Okay. And I found that to be very helpful in that I could reach out to any type of supplier, hotelier, guide, et cetera, globally. And I felt like I had a support system behind me. I will say that within the first 6 months of my employment, and again, I am an employee, I'm not an independent contractor, but within the first 6 months, I think I was sent on 2 independent trips. One was to Jamaica, actually 3 trips. One was to Jamaica for a 2-week trip. And then I did a luxury sailing on a luxury line, and I did more of a contemporary mass market line so that I could kind of experience it, considering I hadn't been out of the country. I needed to know how a cruise process worked, and I needed to know what traveling out of the country felt like and was like, and I didn't look back. Like I said, so it was an amazing way to be introduced to this great industry.
Yeah, so that's a perfect segue because I know we want to talk about finding luxury clients today. We do have a lot of comments in the chat about the second career people, and it does seem like it's such a wide range of first careers that people have who are shared in this industry. So again, I feel incredibly lucky to be able to interact with so many different people from so many different walks of life on this series. But let's get into finding luxury clients. And the first thing I want to do is just define the word luxury, because I know, especially through COVID, the term luxury was changed or perceived to be changed by so many people. And there was all these new luxury terms coming out. So I'm just curious, for you, Leah, what does a luxury client mean? What does luxury travel mean? Is it just spend? Is it something else entirely?
I think that's a great point. And that was going to be the answer to this question, was that I do feel like if you were to Google luxury, it probably falls in line with an answer that revolves around spend or money. Ease and comfort usually revolves around some type of extravagant living of some kind and so forth. But fast forward as we come out of this pandemic here, and I actually even personally feel like the word luxury, the definition to luxury has changed, because time is luxury. We lost a lot of it in 2 years, and to be able to set aside time to be either by yourself or with your loved ones or your friends or your family, or to escape a rat race or the hustle and bustle of work life, or to be able to even just get outside your own 4 walls that we were confined to for 2 years, type thing. It's a luxury to be able to take that time and or that money and be able to go experience something. So I don't necessarily think that it revolves around just a high dollar price point anymore.
Yeah, just going off of that, for your clients who are the luxury clients, or you would categorize as luxury clients, what kind of trips are they looking for now? What kind of things are they looking for now? Or what kind of service are they looking from you?
That's a loaded question here. So the first thing I would say is what types of trips they're looking for now. I think it's a little mixed, because we've had a lot of delayed trips, so people are still rebooking things that have been postponed for a year or two, and that includes honeymoons in particular. I don't think I've done so many honeymoons as I have a handful of months here, because everything was kind of pushed out a little bit. I think that more so I'm finding people want to travel with people because they haven't been able to for a couple of years. So I think I'm seeing a lot more couples wanting to travel with the other couples, their own friends. I'm seeing a lot more family travel, multi-gen travel, also travel with grown children. So, you know, the grandparents with their own grown children and those grown children with their grown children, that type of.
Okay.
I don't necessarily, I'm not seeing as much with the younger kids so much as I am like just the older multi-gen groups.
Yeah.
And the second part of your question, I guess, was,
Yeah, I mean, are there any segments or are there any habits that luxury travels have now that maybe they didn't
Yeah.
have a couple of years ago?
Yeah. I think that in terms of how I'm having to service them more in terms of taking care of this luxury client, be that their needs have changed and that it isn't just booking X, Y, or Z and calling it a day. It's really just a multi-step process from nurturing the relationship more and making sure you kind of ease fears and calm them and take out the worry from the actual reservation process.
Yeah.
It's also being proactive in your own thought process as an advisor, with all the other hoops we have to jump through now to get somebody out of the country and actually even home safe and sound again.
Yeah.
Without creating stress or havoc for the family or couple or person that's traveling. I think that overall, I am, as an advisor, the luxury of a person traveling now is to have us to help guide them, support them, be there for them, map out everything for them, think ahead for them.
Yeah.
Resource.
It does seem that I've heard that from other advisors, and if anyone wants to chime in, we have a couple of comments in the chat that I'm going to grab now too. The chat's open, but convenience seems to be a big one for luxury travelers. They want convenience, they want service, they want things done easily in a world that's becoming increasingly more difficult to navigate, and that's where, like you mentioned, Leah, advisors sort of can step in.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
So let's get into sort of finding luxury clients, because I know that's what a lot of advisors on the call are looking for. Again, we have a half an hour left. So if any of the 175 or so people in the chat do have questions, please drop them in there and we'll grab them along the way. But Leah, you mentioned you were an employee. You started in a storefront. We heard your sort of entry story in the industry. I'm just curious, how did you start building a luxury clientele that would sustain your business or would sustain sort of your agency?
It's a great question too, which I hadn't even thought about after all the years now that, this went from a 5-year plan to 14, 15-year thing right before my eyes. And I hadn't really thought about where I got all these clients. And honestly, it's overwhelming, even what I'm dealing with right now, with everyone wanting to travel. All of a sudden, they wanted to travel yesterday, but they're just calling me for something that's in 2 weeks. It's crazy, the influx of travel right now. Where did I get them all? I have to say that originally, when I first started, having brought no real business myself to the agency, I had the support of an agency that was already established. So that was one thing. So obviously I would take on a few here and there that were already longstanding clients with the agency. But what was very, very helpful, and if anyone out there is very closely connected with a brand, I got a lot of leads and clients from what they would call a lead program. So I happen to focus a lot on luxury cruises, and some of the cruise lines out there even today still have a program where they will kind of funnel new callers to what they would consider an expert advisor. And that is actually where I did get some of my first initial baseline of luxury clients, was through a lead program of a cruise line, because I had done all the training and qualifying to become an expert of that brand. So that's initially what happened. I also feel like the other way that I received a good client base was through what was called a local business development program that our own consortium had started, which if it isn't, for those of you listening, if you're part of consortium and they don't have something like this, it was very beneficial, where basically a team of advisors would pick a focus within the industry, whether it was cruise or honeymoon and anniversary milestone celebration trips, or in my instance, it was cruise. And I worked directly with the sales advisor for that cruise line. And we tag teamed, we partnered up, we got together for meetings, whether it was over the phone or a Zoom or in person. Back then it was in person. And we developed kind of a game plan of what we were going to do to go out and drum up new business. Now, of course, times have changed 14, 15 years later, and I can't say I would be doing the exact same thing. But back then, I mean, we got together, and we hit the pavement. We went to top yacht clubs and country clubs to meet Commodores, to meet of businesses. We went and saw many top chefs from, I mean, the culinary scene is still huge even today. Of course, I think you'd find more of it through Instagram and Pinterest and stuff than you would necessarily meeting face to face, but it would get business through those channels, and we would create little mini groups, whether it was a yacht charter for a yacht club, or a dive group with a dive group, or a culinary foodie wine type group with a cruise that was heading to someplace like Burgundy or Provence or, you know, Greece or something. And I would get my business there. And over time, you have to nurture those relationships and stuff. You will see that it doubles and triples because of word of mouth and personal guest referral to their own friends. I mean, I never really understood it as a kid when your parents would say, well, birds of a feather, you know, but really what would happen is if you surround yourself by the people who you want to have your business come from, and those people are surrounding themselves with other people that are like-minded, it snowballs. And before you know it, you've got a good book of business. But please don't misunderstand that it didn't just happen overnight. And it also it would have come and gone if I hadn't have nurtured the relationships extensively. It was more than just one trip. It has to be more than one transaction that you're paying attention to those guests. So I pride myself very much so on maintaining relationships, whether a person is traveling or not, whether they have an active booking or not.
So we have some comments in the chat, and I said I was going to grab some, so I'm going to now. Lily wants to know about digital marketing to the affluent elite, which I have on my list. I'm going to ask about it in a second. She also wants to know about fees, which I know we're going to talk about soon. We have other people saying they have a good email list from previous business where they had a book of business where they're bringing along too, which is a good place to start, I think. But Leah, it seems like, which is what I hear from a lot of our travel advisors now, despite all these buzzwords about social media and stuff like that, it seems like your business has been built through a lot of word of mouth, and not through necessarily a formal referral program, but through referrals from clients who really appreciate working with you.
Yeah, I would say a lot of my business develops and comes from my own clients already. So a client that I have shares the word with their family and so forth. And I can give some specific examples. I saw somebody ask, like, how do I nurture those relationships? How does mouth happen and so forth? A couple examples I have is that someone in the industry had recommended, their mother and father were traveling with 3 other couples. And all of a sudden I've got 4 couples traveling on an Oceania cruise. Fast forward 4 years later, their grown children now are wanting to plan honeymoons and bachelorette and bachelor parties. And I've just booked 5 different cabins and rooms for different trips for those. And that's all kind of new young money too, right? Like they're not the 65, 70, 80-year-old that this will be their last hoorah type thing. This is those in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that are coming from established families that are used to family travel at a certain level or caliber, and now they're wanting to go and so forth, and they don't necessarily know who to trust. A lot of the younger are kind of Googling, right? But if it's already coming from someone in the family who's known the family for so long and so forth, and then there you go. It just goes from there. I have other
Sorry, Leah, are there any ways that you've seen to encourage that word of mouth though? Because we have so many people agreeing with you in the chat that word of mouth is the best way. But I mean,
Yeah.
do you have to be not aggressive, but do you have to be you have to be doing this on purpose to make sure that word of mouth is spreading, or is it just something that seems to happen organically?
I personally have not incentivized someone to share their experience with me to someone else. No, I haven't really done that. I think you have to, deep down, and at least just how I operate, I treat everyone the way that I would want to be treated myself. So I'm not trying to like fish for compliments, or I'm not trying to fish for the new business or whatever. I really take care of them from the start, and it just organically happens. But like I said, it's not just going through a sales process from the time that they have the booking till their time that they're finished. It's doing things before and after, and throughout the time that they don't even have a booking. That it's done. You got to make sure that they're keeping you top of mind, that they're remembering the trips that they have taken, and that they're. I mean, when they have a good trip, you share that information now, especially with social media. These people are posting pictures, sharing stories, posting videos, inviting people over for a little barbecue on their 4th of July weekend and sharing all about it. And I will say that there are programs and companies out there that if that's the method by which you want to go to try to have that word of mouth, to have it increase your book of business, there are many cruise lines out there and companies that will reward you or incentivize your guest to refer others to travel with you or to travel on that brand. I mean, I do utilize those programs. Regent Seven Seas has an ambassador program. Princess Cruises has a referral program. And it may be a little or a lot to some, but it's still, if you're knowing about how to add value to that client's reservation, they're going to remember the fact that you're the expert and that they can't really figure that out for themselves, or they didn't know it existed. So I take advantage of those programs as well. I think something else that's big after the pandemic too are ways to add value that aren't necessarily highlighted. They're kind of behind the scenes, like for somebody who's military or someone who owns stock with a company. I mean, all the big players out there have incentive if you're a shareholder of their brand. And we're talking Carnival Corp, we're talking NCL Holdings. They all have those ways to add value to those reservations, but it's your job to know and make sure you share that with your guests, and they're going to appreciate you for it. And they're going to make sure that they tell their friends and family, hey, Leah will help get you the best value, or Leah will help make sure she knows how to do X, Y, and Z things to get you the best room, or to be on the best sailing, or to get the best price, or to get the best perks.
Yeah. So just going off of that, Leah, we have someone in the chat, a guest, who says, she says, you can always put a little statement in your signature that says referrals are the best compliments we receive. Feel free to give my info to your friends. And she says, welcome people to tag me in photos so I can see you enjoying the trips like you mentioned.
Excellent words of wisdom, for sure. I know also that people do Google. So if you've got Yelp reviews, Google reviews, our consortium has a review program as well, where if you were to Google Virtuoso, you can find and review your advisor there and review past reviews from travelers. So it's very important. Yes, absolutely. So much information out there.
So I want to pick your brain on a few other things, but Lynn has a question I think is going to be relevant in the chat. She wants to know, in what ways and how often do you nurture those client relationships? And I get the feeling that she's wondering, especially when they're maybe not calling you to book travel. I mean, do you have a philosophy when it comes to keeping up these relationships, keeping these bonds strong with your clients?
Yeah, sure. I love talking about these little tips and tricks and stuff. And I think everybody has to do what works for them, but I can give you a couple examples. So I had a couple that had really never used an advisor before. The husband really wanted to surprise his wife with a trip where she literally did not know where she was going until they got to the gate. And then she saw at the gate, where the flight was headed. And she was like, oh my gosh, we're going to Bora. It was a big deal. He told her basically pack light and pack for warm weather, and she did it, and they went. And how did I follow up with that booking? So obviously it took a lot of time to plan. We planned it. They went, they loved it. I did a couple things before the trip where I provided them kind of like a little get ready for your trip type thing where I sent like sunscreen and like a sun hat type thing that had the logo of the destination that they were going to. And I kind of prepped the trip that way without disclosing it, because the husband kept the gift prize. And then when they came back from their trip, I followed up with a handwritten letter, just to, welcome them back, and couldn't wait to hear about their trip. And I hope it was such a great surprise. And then what I did was, and I've said this before on many interviews that I've had, but I color code my Outlook calendar, and a year from the date in which they took the trip, because we can't remember this stuff when you have hundreds of clients. I color coded my Outlook calendar with a note a year later to make sure that I followed up in a special way their trip to Bora Bora, to Tahiti. And what I did was I resent them a Bora Bora logo item with the room spray from the hotel.
Oh, wow.
With a postcard that said, can you believe it's been a year since you were, in the tropics or whatever. I hope this takes you back again. Can't wait to help plan your next vacation. And what do you know? They have now planned 2 other trips, multi-gen trips, by the way, to different destinations because of little touches like that. And I know a lot of people will say it takes too much work, but I don't have the funds or money to do that. Honestly, you guys, like, I didn't spend any money on that. I went to my suppliers, to my partners, to the brands that we work with and support. And I got the little broom spray from them, and I just hand wrote, and I got a postcard of the front of the Overwater bungalow from the property, from the St. Regis Bora Bora. I sent that. So, and it took me a coded note on my Outlook calendar. I didn't remember it a year later. It came up on, oh yeah, I got to do this. So that's just one example of something that I would do that sparked the conversation, that got the next booking, and so forth. That's just, I have many more, but
yeah, well, that everyone agrees what I'm reading in the chat, that was a great idea, and it is something for a lot of advisors to think about now too, especially when the trips might be coming more often. It is easy to get caught in sort of the minutia of things. So I wanted to ask about a couple of other sort of avenues to find these luxury clients. And you mentioned having a presence in your local community when you started with those groups, those business development groups.
Mhm.
Is that something you still pursue? Is that something you still think is important to be known, especially amongst luxury local community groups where you live?
Mhm. I do think it's important. I'm in a unique situation now where I've relocated. So I am really new kid on the block here. So I really am going to have to hit the ground running and figure out, how to leave my mark in the new community that I'm in. And I will do that. But from speaking to my time in California, when I was there, I do find it's very important to not necessarily be known as the IT advisor, but I think that you should figure out how to give back a little bit within the community, and know that you're supporting, a local business or whatever by hosting an event, or bringing people together. I think now post-pandemic, it's obviously things have changed with regard to that too. There aren't as many gatherings all the time. I think it's opening back up a lot more, but start doing those things again. I think we're all a little burned out by these webinar Zoom calls from time to time. People want social interaction, right? So it will probably be very well received to have a little cocktail hour someplace, 5 o'clock.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, there seems to be a lot of community groups that sort of fit into this luxury travel category. You mentioned connecting with chefs, connecting with yacht groups if you're near a body of water that sort of serves that kind of client. I mean, it does seem like you'll be able to match your client to whatever potential group is out there. Not easily, but there seems to be some matching going on if you just look around you.
And it doesn't have to be fancy or big. You don't even have to think that big either, or fancy or expensive or whatever. I've done it many times too, where I've just got like a contemporary mass market type of group where there's just 2 or 3 couples, let's say, and they want to do a princess cruise to Alaska, or they want to stay closer to home. They want to do an American Queen steamboat sailing, up the Mississippi or something. And what I'll do is I'll say, hey, I'll bring the donuts, the orange juice, and the champagne, and we'll do a backyard little shindig, and let's talk about it. And before you know it, they've invited just their little community neighborhoods worth of friends, and I've got 10 bookings to that Alaska trip or that American Queen trip or whatever. And And it's easy because they all know each other. They're all friends. They want to go together. You're there in person to, again, nurture those relationships or whatever, and answer questions. They feel more comfortable. A luxury client, I think one of your questions was like, why do you get the luxury client versus them just doing it online themselves or whatever? But like, you're the expert. You're the one that needs to make sure you show your value. Nobody wants to plug an American Express online for $116,000 booking. They just don't want to. They want to have their questions answered. They want to be able to come to you with their questions, and you have the answers for them and put it together, make it seamless for them. Same thing goes for a contemporary cruise client or guest that just want something a little more subdued or more local or a lesser price point. They still want to feel that their trip is just as important.
Yeah. So just speaking of that, Leah, we have a question from Jennifer in the chat, and she just wants to know, when you're servicing these luxury clients, I mean, what types of documents do you prepare for them beforehand? I guess to make sure, like you mentioned, that their trip is as seamless as possible.
I think it starts from the beginning of the planning process when it comes to making sure that the things that I'm planning for them are going to be spot on, like thinking ahead of what time does their plane land and what time does their plane take off in terms of how long it takes, to get from one place to the next. So in those cases, you're needing to plan things like transfers or car rentals or whatever. So I make sure that I have all those types of things buttoned up and in one place. Now, a lot of things are electronic. So we're not necessarily sending tangible physical documents. I know that can also vary depending on the need of the guest. If you've got the 35-year-old client versus the 89-year-old client, electronic might not be so easy. So yes, sometimes it means printing things and sending it off to them. But I make sure that it's all in one space is my point, is documentation. You want to make sure it's all in one place. I see somebody mentions using a system called like Access. Yes, absolutely. In fact, many suppliers and vendors are doing that for us too when it comes to FIT land programs, where they plug everything into an Access itinerary. And if you've got to add something here or there, you can do that. Like if you need to add their flight in between their hotels and their cruise or whatever, you can do that. It's all in one spot. I just make sure that it's all there together. I think something else in terms of preparing documentation that's very important now, and that I also think about and do proactively, is make sure that they have the entry requirements for wherever they're going, documented, printed, or directing them to. And I also always plan for that return COVID test. I'm sure all the advisors already know what I'm talking about. You got to have that return test to come back to the United States as it stands right now. And it's very appreciated by our guests when they know that you've planned that in advance, you've made the appointment, or you've given them address as to where they can get it from. And that doesn't mean that you have to be all knowing. It can mean that you give them the link of testfortravel.com to find the closest location for themselves. Or that might mean just contacting the concierge and asking the concierge for their wisdom. Hey, where's the closest little pharmacy to get the test before the clients come home? Giving that stuff to your clients to help them with the full breadth of documents you really have about now. It's not just a cruise or a hotel stay.
Exactly. So we have about 10 minutes left. I have a couple other questions I want to get to, Leah, before we let Amy come back on. But I wanted to sort of ask you about social media, because we were talking about buzzwords, and I know over the past 5 years or so, social media seemed to be a buzzword for a lot of advisors who are looking for ways to find new clients. And I know each person's business and client base is unique to them, but I'm curious if you use social media, and is it a prospect finder or a client finder for you?
For me personally, I do not personally do social media. I know I get the, say it isn't so, you're in your 40s. Why don't you have, why don't you do Pinterest? Why don't you do Instagram? And I'm not by any means saying that it doesn't work or that it's bad. I personally just haven't worked that into my system and my routine as yet, but our agency does. And I met with some mixed reviews depending on where your interests lie in terms of booking travel and arranging travel, and where you want to get your clients from in terms of the type of travel that they're interested in as well. Trust me, I have many multi-gen families where the kids are kind of helping dictate where the family goes, even though mom and dad are paying for it, because they're saying, hey, mom, dad, look at, they're pointing to an Instagram picture that they're like, we don't care where we go, but we want to go right here, and then I have to go find the beach in that destination where they can get that picture, or rent a yacht where they get to be just like the celebrity that's sunbathing on top of it in Saint Tropez or whatever. But But so in those ways, it's there. You can't avoid it. So I may not be active on it myself, but I still have to like roll with it and figure out how to make it work for me too and our clients, and to make sure that I know my clients are going to be utilizing it. So I better figure it out.
Yeah.
He does use Facebook ads. We also use social media and other sources. We do direct mail. We have radio ads. So we do that as well. We get a lot of radio groups this way. We've done several types of music groups, country music, jazz music, and so forth groups. We've done conservative talk radio groups that we've partnered with various cruise lines to create business around. And I know that we've advertised in print magazines like Modern Luxury Magazine, either digitally or in print format too. So all those things can be helpful. Absolutely. Don't knock it till you try it, right? It might work. I will say that it kind of takes more than 1 or 2 times. It definitely takes some time to like get that traction, but don't give up on it. And I think our own travel, we get to glorious places. Why not share it in some way, shape, or form? So I'm not saying I don't share it. I do. I will create individual emails and send out to clients that I'm like, hey, I just got back from X, Y, or Z place. Here are some of my pictures. I think you'd really like it. I can tell you I've gotten a lot of African safari bookings that way.
So one thing you mentioned that I know we haven't spoken about before on this series is you mentioned radio groups, and I'm just curious, could you talk a little bit about that? I mean, is it local? I'm sure it's local radio because it seems a bit easier and a bit more cost effective, but can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know a lot of advisors are probably interested in that too.
Sure. It actually did begin locally, and it wasn't my idea. It was our owner's idea. He actually began before I even started working. So I started working for him in 2007. And he had begun working with K-Jazz, I believe it was, which is like classical and K-Mozart and K-Jazz, classical and jazz music groups. And it had started that way with actually, I believe it was a Silver Sea group. And it snowballed from there because it worked so well. We decided to work in other ways. We decided to go after the country music market. And that's where when I began, this is where we started. This was like my first big group, 2007, 2008. We started working with a drive time radio show host, very popular in Southern California with one of the biggest country music radio stations, Go Country 105. And we started with we didn't know how it was going to go, but we started with kind of a local destination, just Mexico. And we had over 100 to 200 people reserve that, but we planned the next trip on that trip. And every year for 12 years later, we did that trip with that host, even though that host is now no longer in Southern California. He's actually nationally syndicated and now based in Tennessee, but he still has a huge following in Southern California. Those people have now moved to other places too, including Tennessee, Arizona, Nevada, Southern California, Northern California. And every year, because he was such a Pied Piper for the group and because he really nurtured those relationships also himself, that group at any given point, depending on the destination, we had almost 300 even in Alaska on just country music fan group. And all we did was we had the right host, someone who didn't hide and just do the 5 minutes of signing autographs and then you never see him again. I mean, you were joining him for meals, you were joining him in the casino. He's a great host. We had the wherewithal to make sure that we planned 1 year to the next on the current trip. So we didn't leave any kind of downtime to let things just kind of fizzle out. We struck while the iron was hot. The next bookings for the next year already confirmed on the last trip. And we've gone all over. We've done New England, Canada, Alaska, Caribbean multiple times, Mexico. It's been great. We're actually going to be we did a land trip this past year when we pandemic. We actually went to his stomping grounds in Tennessee and did a Nashville, Memphis trip. It was fabulous. And we're looking at Alaska again. And I think we're going to be even looking at Europe at some point. So those groups can be difficult, but they can also be really fun and easy too, because once you've done it once, you've done it for 100, it's the same thing. I have tips and tricks for that too, perhaps on another interview.
Yeah. But again, I think that is so terrific because we've spoken about some radio advertising and some other small advertising on this series before and social media paid advertising, but we haven't talked about that specific kind of unique way to build a following and to use somebody else, not to use somebody else's following, but to employ somebody else's following in order to build a booking.
Yeah. The point is that everybody had one common interest and it was country. whether or not they liked the music, sang to the music, or danced to the music, it was just a common thread. And you have a great, lively host who's super supportive, loves his fans, loves the music and the culture and the theme of that. And when you're together and you like something similar, it's just a fun, downright great time. And those clients, whether we're doing those trips or not, have become my clients for other trips, whether it's their own family trips, little, one-off trips here and there. But because I've traveled with them for 12 years, that's another key thing is I've traveled with those people for 12 years. Yeah. It's a relationship that has created a really nice friendship too.
Yeah, and I guess just going back to what we asked a little bit before, I mean, social media, I know people are very successful in social media, but you seem to want to build the relationships almost as close to face or face-to-face as possible. Like, it seems like you really enjoy that in-person communication and being able to see people and identify people and see their likes and hear about their lives and things like that.
I really do. I'm glad it comes across that way because I really do. And I do care about them, whether I've met them face to face or not, whether or not they live in Ecuador, Australia, New Zealand, East Coast, West Coast. I really do. And it just helps the business along the way. When Zoe the dog isn't feeling well, or Sally has little baby Joseph and the grandbaby's here, and you celebrate the milestones and the ups and the downs, and you create travel around that. And
yeah. And I think what you mentioned before, you mentioned sort of the customer service aspect of being a travel advisor and being able to not get that word of mouth just because of how high you take that part of your job. That seems like, going back to the original topic of the day, that seems like just servicing your clients, knowing that it's important for them to get that attention is going to lead to more clients, whether it's word of mouth or whether it's some other way.
That sums it up perfectly. Absolutely. You really, it can't be just about the $100,000 booking you close. It really can't. You have to care more in the long run. And as an employee, I have to say, I've noticed this. Sometimes I don't even look at what the commission level is. I really don't, because if that's all you focus on is the commission level or how much commission you're getting from this booking versus that booking, I think you do yourself a disservice. I really do. It's the quality of the relationships you have that lead to the quality bookings you will eventually have over time and so forth, and the longevity of it versus just the quantity. So what if you have 100 bookings that are great if they never come back to you? It's just, I think it's very, very important to make sure you're not too focused on the dollar. I really do. And I can say that with confidence, knowing I have, over $2 million in sales a year. I mean, I don't know. I think it just takes that. I really do. I think you have to stop looking at just the dollar, and you have to make sure that you are nurturing those relationships and caring about your clients. And I really truly believe that 90% of the advisors really do. I mean, you can't be in this job and I love what I do every single day, despite all the hoops we have to jump through and the long hours and the pinging on your computer all the time and your cell and so forth. And it's not a 9-to-5 job. And I get that. Yeah. But every day is a different day. So no 2 days are alike.
Well, I know we have other questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Again, Leah, I want to say thank you so much. I really did have a ton of fun talking to you today, and I know I learned a lot, and I know the advisors learned a lot. Before we do wrap up, I would just want to invite Amy back on the call if she wants to sort of say her goodbyes.
Oh, I just want to thank everyone for joining today. And Leah, you know that I have the utmost respect for you, and you did an amazing job. And I just want to say, everything that Leah had to say, I could hear themes coming through her conversations, relationships. That's super important to us at Explorer Journeys as it relates to our travel advisors and to our guests, but also the art of listening. Leah obviously does a lot of listening to her clients. We do a lot of listening to you as travel advisors as well as to our guests. So great partnership here with our travel advisors, and of course, Leah and Coastline and everyone else on the line. We look forward to engaging with you at Explorer Journeys too.
Well, again, thank you, Amy. Again, thank you, Leah. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the call today. If anyone missed this and wants to rewatch it, we'll have it up on YouTube later today. And again, we'll be back here in 2 weeks to talk about more groups, bachelorette and bachelor party groups. So hopefully you can join us for that. But again, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week, and I'll hope to see you all next time.